What is going on, my fellow nerds? Abrasive Otter here. Today we're going to be going over Part 1 of the Convention of Elements Lightning Hydra Wizard for patch 2.5 and Season 10 of Diablo 3. Now, what we saw in the PTR is that this build is pretty much the greatest thing since sliced bread because of how quickly it killed the Rift Guardian, but what we're seeing nowadays is that the Demon Hunter is pretty much dominating it. And that just really has to do with the fact that the playstyle of the wizard and how it functions with the group is just so drastically different from how it's been working over the last 4 seasons that people aren't really accustomed to it yet. But today we're going to be showing you how to actually run this build for Griff 90 to 100 speeds in about 11 minutes average. I run Griff 99s in 11 minutes average. You can go ahead and check out my stream at twitch.tv Abrasive Otter to kind of check out the gameplay and kind of see what this build and what this guide is going to show you in action. So to show you what I'm going to do, I'm going to have to split this video into 2 parts because there's a lot of information. Part 1 is going to be going over simply what gear you need, the breakpoints you need to achieve, your Paragon points, and your skills and your passives. It's very easy, it's very short and to the point. Part 2 is going to be a lot more in detail and is going to actually show you how to play the build, but try not to skip to Part 2 until you've actually watched Part 1, because unless you actually hit the specific breakpoints labeled out in this guide, then everything in Part 2 isn't going to be able to be relatable and you're not going to be able to apply it. So without further ado, let's get into the guide for learning the new Convention of Elements Lightning Hydra Wizard for patch 2.5 and Season 10 of Diablo 3. Hey guys, so now we're going to get into the actual build and the actual pieces that are part of it. And the first thing that we're going to go over are the pieces of the build that you cannot replace at all. Like, these are core to it, you can't put anything else in their place. So those pieces are your Vire's Swaggering Stance Boots, Talrash's Unwavering Glare, Zula's Improbable Chain, Talrash's Relentless Pursuit, Vire's Proud Pauldrons, and Talrash's Allegiance. Those pieces you can't replace with anything, ever. Like, you have to have that in your gear, period. Now the things that you can switch out. You can switch out your Serpent Sparker and your Starfire. You can roll whichever one you want just to make sure that one has increased attack speed, the other one has reduced cooldown reduction, and it has better rolls. Just find out whichever one's better and run that. I usually like to run Serpent Sparker because Starfire has an affix roll where your Serpent Sparkers is static. Your Ring of the Royal Grandeur, your Convention of Elements, and your Mantled are the 3 rings that you will be running for this build. You have to wear 2 of them and one has to be in the cube. I would suggest that you run either Convention or Mantled in the cube because they have affix rolls and you want the max affix on one of them. So make sure that you get the max damage on one of them and you have the other one that rolled better in your slot. Whereas Ring of the Royal Grandeur has that static effect so you don't have to worry about some crazy, affix roll on the legendary. For your bracers, you have 2 options. With this build, you can either run Lukuni Prowlers or you can run Ancient Paragon Defenders. Now, because Lukuni Prowlers can roll an extra stat they can roll 5 stats instead of 4, Lukunis are a little bit better in terms of damage. Like, you'll be able to do more damage with these because what it's going to allow you to do is roll an extra crit stat in your ring or in your gloves. You're going to be able to run an extra crit stat. With Ancient Paragon Defenders, you have to run that crit stat, which means you have to run attack speed in one of your rings, and therefore you lose out on a crit stat, so you do less damage, but you're much tankier. So it's an argument of, do I want to do 6% more damage or do I want to have 2 times as much toughness? And it really depends on how well you can play the build and kite. So I'll leave that option out to you guys. Just know that if you wear Lukunis, you have more damage. If you wear Ancient Paragon Defenders, you're much tankier. Now, between your Talrash's Stride, your Talrash's Grasp, your Veer's Sightless Skull, those are the pieces I wear. Just know that your helm, your gloves, and your pants, you can switch in between for Talrash's and Veer's pieces because both sets have those pieces. Just to make sure that on your character you have 3 pieces of Vire's and you have 5 pieces of Talrash's. So that way that you get your 4-piece fires and your 6-piece Tal Rasha. Simple enough. Now the breakpoints that we're going to want with this build are cooldown reduction number 1. What we need is 62.2% cooldown reduction. This is going to allow us to be able to rotate our convention. But know that at 62.2% you have to literally be on point with every rotation. So if you screw up once, if you press your rotation half a second late, then you're going to be stuck with that half a second late rotation for the rest of the game. So what I like to do and what I try to aim for is the 64.4% cooldown reduction. That's what's optimal. It gives you a little bit more breathing room so that you can kind of make a mistake, and the next time it comes over, you kind of have that 2 seconds of breathing room so that you're not stuck with having a screwed up rotation if you messed up. In order to reach this cooldown reduction though, even for the 62.2%, know that you have to run cooldown reduction in literally every single piece of gear that you can. So I'm not going to go over every individual piece like Riker does, because it's just really too time consuming and it's too detailed. So it's really just an application of common sense, guys, like your gems, topazes, diamond and helm, emerald and socket. Just kind of use common sense when building this build so that you can actually reach your breakpoints. Just know that in order to run cooldown reduction, every single piece of gear that can roll cooldown reduction, you need to run cooldown reduction in it. And in order to run the 64.4%, you only have 2% breathing room. So over the total amount of cooldown reduction, you can only run, you have to run 8% on everything with 10% in your weapon, and then one item can roll 6%. That's it. Like, it's very, very strict. So make sure that you have that. The next breakpoint that we want to achieve is the crit hit chance breakpoint. Make sure that you're running at least 55%, because 65% is this breakpoint. Anything over 65% becomes an inflated stat and doesn't really actually do anything for your damage. It's just kind of like, it doesn't really do much for you. So with 55% plus the ice blink being ran by the ZDPSs, you're going to have 65%, and that's a really important breakpoint so that your Hydras crit every single time they do their mantle proc. So try to get that 55%. Next one is very, very important. And in part 2, I'm going to go into it a lot more detailed, but know that what you need is called an attack speed breakpoint for your Hydras. Hydras have an actual attack speed breakpoint based on the frames rendered by the game for snapshotting them. And we need to get it to 18 frames instead of 24 frames. And in order to do that, we need to run 4.02 attack speed with double stack Archon and double stack Time Bubble. So in order to do that, we need, out of the 6 pieces that can roll attack speed on your gear, being your weapon, gloves, both your rings, your chest, and your bracers, 5 of those pieces need to roll attack speed, and the total amount must equate to equal 33% or more. Just, that's the important. 33% or more in your build somewhere is what you need. I know these are really difficult to reach on breakpoints, especially like in combination, and you're like, I need all 3. Yes, you need all 3 in order for this build to work. That's why this build is very hard to not only play, because you need the right gear, but then to practice. So there's very few wizards out there that can actually run this build because the gear is so demanding. So that's that. Now we're going to go into skills. Skills are pretty simple. I don't care where you put these on your skill bar, just as long as you have them on your skill bar, you know? So we need Magic Missile, Glacial Spike, Black Hole, Spell Steal, Archon, Combustion. These 3 are going to serve as your primary elements when you're casting before you go into Archon form and you beam. I'm going to show in the next video how you can get 4 stacks, but just note your beam counts as a lightning spell, so you don't actually have to cast Hydra in order to get 4 stacks. So that's what you're going to run. Your Hydra, obviously, because this is what's allowing us our single target burst now, so we want to have the Hydras. Energy Armor, Force Armor is going to give you that bonus armor, which is super important because we have inflated resistance for our intelligence, so bonus armor is super, super nice in our build. And on top of that, anything that deals more than 35% of our HP is only going to deal 35%, you know? So big hits don't deal big hits. It's nice. Slow time, stretch time. This is very important. You need to have this in order to reach that 4.02 breakpoint. I'm going to show you how to actually double stack it so that you get 20% instead of 10%. Now for our passives, we're going to be running 4. We have Power Hungry, Paralysis, Unstable Anomaly, and Evocation. Power hungry because you're going to be distanced from the target. Paralysis because mantled and unstable anomaly, you're going to be proccing this every rift. I don't die every single rift I play, but I will proc this every single rift I play. So it's really important that you run. Evocation is going to allow you to hit that 62.2% cooldown reduction breakpoint, so make sure that you run that. Paragon points, very simple. Oh, I missed one. Basically, run 25% movement speed in your build. In order to do that, it's very simple. Press I, go to your details, and then go to the bottom, and you will see your movement speed. Now, if your boots have movement speed, or your Lacunis have movement speed, something, whatever, just make sure that in your build, it caps at 25%. So add whatever Paragon is necessary in order to give you 25%, and then dump everything else into intelligence. For offense, cooldown reduction number 1, attack speed number 2, crit hit chance, crit hit damage. Know that if you don't run cooldown reduction and attack speed at full, so you're not 400 Paragon, you can't run this build. It's not possible. You have to have both of these. For defense, armor, life, resist all, life regeneration, in that order. Those are what's important. For utility, don't put any points to area damage. This is so that it makes it so the game doesn't lag so hard, because area damage is a really laggy function. It causes the servers to kind of like seizure on themselves, so don't do that. Just leave area damage out of it, because mantled can't even proc area damage, but your regular beam can. So we're not going to use that. For next, it's going to be life on hit, then resource cost reduction, and gold find. Easy peasy, right? For our cube, I kind of went over this earlier in the guide, but we're just going to go over it real quick. Obviously, Starfire or Serpent Sparker in the cube, whichever one rolled better. I usually like to run Starfire because it has an affix roll on it, whereas Serpent Sparker static. Swami, because this is what we need in order to double stack our Archon. It's going to allow us to stack 50 stacks on top of 50 stacks for our Fizula. And then for our rings, obviously, Mantled Heal or Convention of Elements. Try not to run Ring of the Royal Grandeur in it, because it's just so unlikely that you have like both a convention and a mantled roll at such god roll levels that you can run both in your build. So I would suggest wearing one or the other. I like mantled heal being ran in just because I was able to find a high roll convention. I haven't been able to find a high roll mantled ring, so that's why I run it there. And that's that, easy enough. Now, last note I want to say before I go is your legendary gems. Legendary gems for this build, you're going to need Zystone, Gogok, and Bane of the Stricken. Make sure all of them are level 25 or higher, otherwise the build won't work. You're going to need your Gogok, especially level 25. I know that my Fizula's is 50, that's why I said 33%, because 100 plus 33 is why it said. So I hope you enjoyed the guide. If you did, we'll see you in part 2 where we'll learn how to play the build. Take it easy.